Hello and welcome to Computer Retro Bus. In today's episode we are tackling with this Matrox Millennium P650. It was designed as an engineering marvel for professionals, designed to make life amazing and look great. It was more designed to test the limits of my sanity, I think. It gave me nothing but trouble from start to end. So stick around, grab a coffee and see all the pain I had to suffer so you don't have to. Driver versions, things not displaying correctly. I saw it all. For the last 3 days I've been fighting with this thing to make it work and display correctly. The card we're looking at, as mentioned, is the Matrox Millennium P650. It has 64 meg of DDR RAM. In the late 90s, Matrox were the king of clarity, obsessed with crisp 2D image quality while the rest of the world chased polygons and frame rates. While Nvidia and ATI were brawling for the soul of the gaming PC, Matrox sat in its lab coats and declared itself above such nonsense until the world moved on without them. By the time they realised the future wasn't colour accuracy, it was frame rates and explosions, it was far too late. They threw their hat into the 3D ring for the first time with the Matrox Mystique, that everyone actually nicknamed the Matrox Mistake, then had another crack at it with the G series, which was a little bit more respectable. The Parhelia core cards, like the one I have here, came with so much promise, but ultimately arrived far too late to a party that was already over. So our journey begins, as they often do, on the driver's section of a manufacturer's website. So going in there and selecting the P650. I want the drivers, yes, and I want for Windows XP. And here we are. I have 3 versions to select from. Decisions. I tried all 3 in the end and I had all sorts of adventures with each and every one of them. And off we go. So I started with a fresh copy of Windows XP, went through the whole installation process, but lo and behold, when Windows XP tries to actually load and it gets to the login screen, it just stops. What I found out later was that if you install XP with this card, it just simply does not get any further. I ended up installing the card into my Windows 2000 box and running the benchmarks on that. Okay, looking at Quake 3, the numbers look fairly respectable. The frame rate tends to fluctuate between 70 and 90, so very, very much playable. But that's sort of what you'd expect. This card came out so many years after Quake 3. Okay, and next we are looking at Need for Speed Underground. Here the performance was pretty poor, as we'd expect. It seems to peak at about 20 frames per second, rarely going over. However, the image quality was pretty good. When you look at the ground and you look at the reflections, especially where you go over the wet road parts, it looks really nice. Certain sections, when you go through this tunnel area, for example, it does touch 30 for a couple of seconds, but as soon as you get back out into the environment, it really starts dipping down at 20 and below. And now we're looking at Return to Castle Wolfenstein. Here the frame rate looks pretty much locked at 30. I'm not sure why. It doesn't seem to go above it. It seems to flutter between 29 and 30, so I feel like there's some sort of a frame limitation. I actually did look up some commands to up the maximum frame rate, and I tried those and they didn't seem to make any difference, so I'm not sure, but it seems to be a common theme with this card. It just seems to lock the frame rate at certain numbers for some reason. This one was a bit of a surprise because Return to Castle Wolfenstein is built on the Quake 3 engine, so you would expect it to be the same, or similar at least. I thought maybe it's the drivers or there's a control panel to turn VSync off, but with Matrox you don't get much. There's no control panel, nothing. You get a driver and that is it. Moving on to one of my old favourites now, Counter-Strike. This exhibited some really bizarre behaviour. It seems to want to just stick to 30 frames per second if it can. It sort of bumps up for a little bit. It tries to hit 60, then it will just push it back down to 30. It's a really bizarre behaviour. A lot of the time it's at 30. When I die and it goes to animation, it just shoots up to 60, but then it will come back down to 30 again. It is just all over the shop. And the fun doesn't stop there. We go on to Max Payne, which does the exact same thing. It is really, really bizarre. It shoots to 60 frames, stays there for a while, and decides, you know what, nah, I like 30 more now. Goes down to 30, stays there. It does, fluctuate sometimes, but it really seems to love those 2 frame rates and stick to them as much as it can. And here we are running the Matrox Reef demo. As you can see, the frame rate isn't too spectacular, but the visuals are actually pretty nice. I'm not sure how other Matrox cards run in the frame rate because all the videos online don't seem to have a frame counter, but with this particular card you can sort of see it's more in the 20s. I'll put a link in the top right corner for the full screen capture of the demo. And Far Cry, my god, this is where it really got even deeper. Trying to get Far Cry to run was an absolute nightmare. Initially it just would not run. All I got was this black screen with the radar. Sometimes the gun showed, most of the time it didn't. I tried all 3 versions of the driver and it just would not work. I ended up trying the card in my Rescue Pentium 4 that already had Windows XP installed. Again, I tried all 3 drivers. The last driver finally sorta worked. And when I say sorta, I mean minimally. It decided, well, I can't be bothered drawing half these textures, so I just won't. And this is where I really wonder if it was the limited RAM that made it struggle, because it's only got 64 meg of RAM and most of the cards at that era all had 128, some 256, and this had only 64, so I do wonder if that was what was causing that frame jumps as well as the RAM was trying to load. Okay, and now down to the last one, 3D Mark. Yes, it ran it. And since I was tearing my hair out going between all those driver versions, I actually ran it with all 3 driver versions. I figured, you know what, let's have a look which version is going to be the best. For some reason, with video card drivers, earlier versions tend to have better performance than later versions, especially with the NVIDIA ones. So I thought, is it true for this also? You generally tend to expect drivers to get better and squeeze out more performance over time, but for some reason, that's not the case. So looking at our 3D Mark scores, we can see that the earliest version did have the best score. While the first 2 were pretty close, you can see version 2.13 has quite a bit of a drop off. It's a 13% decrease in performance. While NVIDIA's GeForce 4 series and ATI's Radeon 9000 series were turning heads with raw horsepower, the P650 proudly offered superior 2D clarity and quiet operation, virtues that mattered exactly to no one shopping for games. Its lack of horsepower, DirectX 9 support and weak 3D performance compared with its relatively uncompetitive price. And that's it for this week's trip through GPU purgatory. If you like this kind of retro self-torture, please like and subscribe, because somewhere out there, there's another card waiting to ruin my week. Thank you. I'll see you in the next one.